Are you awake? That was a meditation that just was really quiet. So I wanted to make sure. So I began a few weeks ago talking to you about the basic principles of unity. And that was because a lot of people asked me, tell us what your take is on these principles. So 2 weeks ago, I gave you an introduction to it and some history of it, that these aren't set in stone. They were just discovered or synthesized into 5 statements in 1990 by Connie Fillmore Bazzi, who is the great-granddaughter of Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, as a way for us to have some sort of handle on what is unity. As many of you have said to me, and I've experienced myself, it's so hard to say what is unity to someone. And this doesn't really help because you couldn't give these 5 principles in an elevator speech. So we'll keep working at it, trying to understand it. And I will give you a really easy shortcut, the shortcut that worked for me when I had to memorize this for a test. The test to get into the Institute. 5 principles. God is, I am, I think, I pray, I act. That's one way to at least know where you're going when you try to explain the 5 principles. God is. It told us, the first one, if you will change the thank you, Sue, the first principle, and this is said in many different ways. There isn't just one way to say it. Different authors will write it different ways. Talks about who God is. There's only one ultimate power in the universe, and that power is God, and its nature is absolute, unchanging good. We talked about that word God and how it has some baggage, and some people can use other words, and that's okay, because the baggage of the word God comes from some of our traditional religious upbringing, and it defines it so in a stuck way that it doesn't work, and that's okay. So anytime I say the word God, translate it to whatever word you want to use. Or whenever I say the word the divine, if that doesn't work for you, translate that to another word that you want to use. The universe, all that is. Pure potentiality. It's one of my favorites. So the first one, God is. The second one, I am. And I talked about that last week. What is a human being? Human beings are created from absolute good. And so our inherent nature is also good. And remember, God and good, there's an equal sign there. So it's implying boldly that we are God. And that's where a lot of people say, whoa. We call that inherent goodness of human beings the Christ. We had a wonderful discussion about that after last week's service in the second hour, where we talked about how comfortable is it for you to say, I am the Christ, just like Peter declared Jesus to be the Christ, the Son of the living God. Can you say you are the Christ? That's very bold. And, you know, we don't have to think of ourselves as always showing up that way. But the ground of our being is God. And that inherent goodness of us we call the Christ. So every once in a while, you can peek out of your darkness into the light of knowing you are one with God. A lot of people gave me feedback that they loved the metaphor of the wave in the ocean. That we are in God, or we are God, just like a wave is the ocean. It's not separate from the ocean. It is the ocean, and yet it's distinct. It peaks up and becomes a wave, and it fades in. It's in and out, and the ocean is all in and out and through that wave, and vice versa. And that's sort of like our theology of what human beings are in God. So, the third principle that I want to talk about today, and the fourth, are really less principles and more tools and practices. The third principle is about how can I show up as the Christ? How can I change my world from being limited and small to expansive and full of potential? So the third principle, spoken in many different forms and with different emphasis on different words, it can take a whole different tangent. I chose this one. Our thoughts are our creative power. Whatever we persistently focus our thoughts and feelings upon manifests in our lives. A lot of people will go straight into the law of attraction and the movie, The Secret. I prefer not to do that right now because it can be so skewed. It'll be something we'll talk about in the second hour in our small group discussions if you choose to stay with us. What I really want to focus on today, and I'll tell you what, this principle is so huge. I was consistently pulling books out off my shelf that pertain to it. I could pick up nuggets to tell you. I had a pile that kept growing, and it's literally 6 different books that I actually used. There are books on the shelves out there that talk about this practice in every way, shape, or form you can think of. It is a lifelong challenge. You won't get done with it. So be patient and gentle with yourself. And don't feel so overwhelmed that you don't even try to start changing some thoughts. Because it all starts with one thought that you can change. Joyce Burgess had given me a book that I need to return to you that I used, Conscious Language. It's not just the thoughts, but the words that we say aloud that can have such an influence on our lives. They are our creative power. And that's so spiritually based. As the ancient Hebrews wrote, in the beginning, God said. The saying is the creative power. And the mystic who wrote the Gospel of John, in the beginning was the Word. The Word is God, and that is the creative force. So don't deny that your words have no creative power. And where do our words come from? Our thoughts. So the words begin with thoughts. So it's our task, and a joyous task because we can see the benefits of changing or watching and becoming observers of our thoughts. You will hear this in every culture of every mystical teacher. Buddhist, Hindu, Kabbalah, Christianity that focuses on Jesus' teachings. And so I think this is so universal, it's worth, we'll talk about this in so many ways throughout the life of this congregation. I do want to explain something that really is valuable, just my personal story. When I came to the first Unity church that I went to, which was in Durham, as I told you before, I was in a pretty low place. And I felt depressed and anxious. I felt pretty unable to change anything in my life. But I had come to that church because I was in a different church when I suddenly noticed the words I was saying in a song. The words were something like, I am so thirsty, like the deer that comes to the water. I've come to drink the water and I'm so thirsty. And I thought, I've grown up in Christianity all my life and here I am still saying I'm thirsty. There's something wrong with this picture. I should be quenched by now. It was like the little moment of enlightenment that this isn't working for me. And I thought to myself, I have to find a group of people who will declare the truth of what it means to be a child of God, a Christian, as I saw Christians to what it should be. Within 3 weeks, I cannot tell you how I connected. It was just like word of mouth. Why don't you come with me to this church? I had no idea what Unity was. And I walked into the Unity of Durham. I told them this story last month when I visited them. It was my opportunity to say thank you. And I want you to know that there are people who have walked into this church who are appreciative of your ministry to them. And they might be gone for a long time, and none of you who knew that person are still here, but the ministry is important. Planting seeds of awareness. I was not a happy camper. I sat with a tissue box at my side with every song, hearing these songs that just touched my heart and began to heal me. And somebody said to me, say affirmations. And I said, say what? I didn't even know anything about Unity. And she said, say affirmations. Say them even if you feel like they're not true about you. And she went to the back of the sanctuary and she wrote down some words on a paper and gave them to me. And she said, this is an affirmation. It starts with I am, because you're telling yourself who you truly are. And she said, say these whether you believe them or not. Just say them. Well, the ones that I said, and I took them home, and I thought, you know, I can't lose because I am so lost right now anyway. It was like I hit bottom emotionally. There was no place to go but up. I might as well give it a try. The therapy and the antidepressants really weren't working anyway. Somewhat, to the point of at least I wasn't in complete darkness. I was able to get myself up and out and keep a job. So I had these affirmations, and I put them on cards, and I posted them on mirrors, the dashboard, the place right above the door handle of the house, of the apartment. So when I turned the handle, I saw this, replacing thoughts that I had habitually held with thoughts that were foreign to my subconscious. One of them was, I am happy and at peace. It was what I had been praying for. Oh God, please heal my mental state. And here was this woman saying, write this and say it. I am happy and at peace. Another thought I had was, because of the kind of Christianity I grew up with, that I felt unworthy. And she had said to me, learn this one. I am a beloved child of God. And then she wrote this one. I am radiant. I didn't feel radiant. But she said, say these words. And every week when I came back to that church, she said to me, I don't even know this woman's name anymore. I can't remember. It doesn't matter. She was just a seed planter, an instrument of God's peace. She said, how's the affirmations going? I said, I'm saying them. But I don't know how it's working, if it's working. Say them anyway. Just keep saying them. Good job. Keep saying them. Well, I did, and I did, and I did, and I did. What I was doing, just as an aside now, can you see what I was doing? The subconscious thoughts were so dark and strong that I couldn't even hear them. They were they were what I thought was my essence. That darkness, that unworthiness, that not knowing who I was at all. So she asked me to replace those thoughts as often as I could remember. And as I began to say those thoughts, then that was such a bright thought that I had introduced into my subconscious. It kind of shined a light on that darkness that I was holding, and I could see it and say, wow, I don't want to look like that. I want to be what I just introduced. And I was replacing. It's like the subconscious is like a vinyl record player where you put the needle on the groove and it plays right in that groove. And the affirmation was like kind of filling in that groove and making a new one. And, actually physically that is what happens with brain and the sensors in our brain, where we can make new pathways, neural pathways, if we change our habits of thinking. So this is not all woo-woo mystic. It's actually being shown to be true, that we can change our lives by changing our thinking, making new neural pathways. Whatever we persistently focus our thoughts and feelings on manifests in our lives. Well, back to my story. It was years. If it took years of me to sink that low in my brainwashing of who I am, unworthy, sinful, no good. It took several years of things like affirmations, denials, learning, denials meaning releasing, deliberately releasing my old thoughts, saying they have no power over me, of becoming more and more an observer of myself. Do you understand that? To the point where I could catch myself formulating a negative thought, and I could say, cancel, clear. I am a beloved child of God. I would grab these tools that this woman had given me and remember to say them. Well, years later, where I stopped being so needy of healing, and I really had found a foundation. I was then able to give back to the church, and I was beginning to serve. One woman, I don't know what I was doing, how she caught me, but she said, "You look radiant today." And I remembered that's what I had been introducing starting 5 or 6 years before. Wow. I didn't have to call myself depressed and anxious anymore. I could call myself radiant and know it was true. Amazing, amazing. And this is because I changed my thoughts. That's it. With the help of a very supportive, loving community like this one. Amazing the healing we can do when we choose different thoughts and make it a practice. And that's what brings us into the third, or the fourth. There's so much more I can say about the third one. You'll hear it over and over again in different things. You can stay on that slide, Sue, thank you. But one of the things I wanted to tell you that was very valuable to me and is valuable to many people is the verse from Romans 12, verse 2, where the Apostle Paul says, "Be ye transformed by the renewal of your mind." Be transformed by the renewal of your mind. A lot of people think that they can transform their lives by the renewal of their circumstances. Get a new job, find a new husband or partner, change their town that they live in. Then my life will be better. And you know the old Buddhist story about somebody comes into town and asks a man on the side of the road, "What's this town like? My family and I want to move here." And the wise man says, "What was the town like that you just left?" Well, that's the kind of town this is too. Because whatever answer you gave, those people, they just were nasty, they gossiped, they were backstabbers, you're going to find that in the next town too, or the next job. Why? Not because you attracted them to you, but because that's the lens that you saw the world with. Now, if you can change that to everyone is a beautiful child of God, like I am, how much better will your view of the world be? So, whatever town you move into, whatever relationship you move into, whatever church you move into, you'll find what you're looking for, because subconsciously you're looking for something. If you're expecting negativity, gossip, unfairness, that's what you're going to see. So, be ye transformed by the renewal of your mind, not your circumstances. How can we do that? Principle number 4 helps us do that, because it focuses on prayer and meditation as tools and practices for how we can renew our minds, how we can stop identifying automatically with the little self and start stepping into an awareness of the all that is, and that we are in it, like the wave in the ocean. Prayer and meditation is something we could talk about for a whole year and not finish the topic. So we just keep playing with it. We practice it here on Sundays. I model affirmative prayer when I pray with you. We call it asking, but actually the literal translation of asking in the Greek is claiming. So prayer is a claiming of our true self. Prayer has become ritualistic for many people. And ritualistic, such as a friend, somebody just said, was it this morning, or about growing up in the Episcopal Church, for example, that it was so ritualistic it didn't have any meaning. Others grew up in another church where it was so personal that it was just a burden to keep identifying with this language of, oh God, please give me. So we teach every prayer. If it works for you, it's great. But if it's not vital to you anymore, consider using affirmative prayer. Affirmative prayer, claiming your wholeness, claiming protection, claiming inner peace. Like my affirmation, I am happy and at peace. Wow. And if you don't believe it, just introduce the thought anyway. Because what is a belief but just a thought that you're holding on to? So why not introduce a positive belief? Prayer is that claiming, that active addressing the promises of being one with God. Meditation would be the letting go, as Light wrote in that song, remembering and forgetting. So we're remembering the capital I, capital A-M, and we're forgetting the little I am. So if I look in the mirror and I say, just think about what I say when I look in the mirror. What do I see? Do I see an angry person? Do I see a frustrated person? Do I see a scared person? Well, yes, probably. In different times in my life, I do, because I'm living a human experience. But can I also see a person who can handle it? Can I claim the truth that I'm not alone and I don't have to be totally afraid? Can I claim the truth that my cells are imbued with all that they need to be strong and make my body healthy? Yes, because that's who I am too. The I am that is in the oneness. So it's a matter of choosing which I am you want to show up as. The I am that's limited, the little lowercase I am, or the I am. And that's one of the things we do, is to talk about the powers of God, the 12 powers in Unity. I'll talk more about that later, but boy, those are powerful tools. Wisdom, understanding, strength, love, life, imagination, and will. Those are characters of God. characteristics of the I am, and those are our powers. So, prayer and meditation, we'll talk about that over and over, so I just want to let it be now. What we're doing is projecting ourselves in prayer into that place of pure positive energy, saying, I'm not that limited thing that I think I am all the time. I'm going to take a moment, and don't think you can do it just at the stoplight for a second, because it's not a long enough moment. Just take a moment. It doesn't take that long. And if you can't take time to actually sit in meditation, consider your time eating breakfast to be a time when the TV's off and the news isn't coming into your mind. And maybe you could just chew and think, I am one with all that is, during that 10 minutes that you're eating breakfast. Wow, that could change your morning. To tap into that pure positive energy, to know that, oh, I'm more than what this monkey mind is saying all the time. That can be a true meditation, even if you can't sit still long enough to do the transcendental meditation that some people claim to do. Maybe you're one of those who have a hard time with that. I am. So how about if I eat with nothing else happening but deliberate words of affirmation? Could I transform my mind? You bet I could. So could you. So I ask you this week to try something, to become aware of your thoughts. Get a piece of paper, mark it down the middle with a big long line to make 2 columns, and start to catch yourself. What are your thoughts saying? One column can be positive thoughts. One column can be negative thoughts. And write them down. No judgment, just write them. And see, by the end of the time you fill up one side, which side got filled up first. It's just a way not to judge yourself, but to become aware of yourself. Try it. Just see. Because if you can start to observe your thoughts, you can start to change your world. It's that simple. So I invite you to stay for the second hour and talk more. There's no way to end this and wrap it up and say this is the final of this. It's an ongoing exploration, and I invite you to continue that with me. And thank you. Namaste.